I was 63, married nearly 40 years. I thought I understood love. I thought I had life figured out, until one rainy Tuesday when a quiet question from a much younger man cracked open everything I thought was settled. This isn't a story about betrayal. It's about awakening, about a woman who had faded into the background of her own life, until one man's gentle eyes reminded her she was still there. This story isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's soft, it's quiet, but it will pull you in, make you remember what it feels like to be seen again, to want again, to feel the weight of choices and the ache of time. Before you judge, listen. Before you turn away, feel it. Because some truths only whisper, and some hearts don't wake until much later. If you've ever wondered, is this all there is, then this story is for you. Like, subscribe, feel it fully. I was 63, married to the same man for nearly 4 decades. We raised kids, bought a house, lived through bills and birthdays, sorrow and small joys. I wasn't someone who chased excitement. I wasn't restless. I believed I had life figured out. Love, loyalty, marriage. I found peace in predictability. I didn't want fireworks. I wanted calm. But sometimes life sneaks up behind you, lays a hand on your shoulder and whispers, "Not yet." I never thought something like this would happen to me. And if you're listening, I hope you don't make the same mistake I did, thinking you're finished when you're not. It started on a gray Tuesday afternoon, the kind of sky that looks like it hasn't decided if it's going to cry. My husband, Mike, had asked if I could help with the setup for a retirement luncheon at his office. They were short-staffed, and I'd always liked being helpful. The office buzzed with an odd mix of celebration and something like sadness. There were bagels, fruit platters, paper cups filled with sparkling cider. People laughed, talked in that polite way you do when it's not really your goodbye. I didn't know the man retiring, but I smiled anyway. That's just what you do when you're someone like me. Mike was deep in conversation with the guest of honor, so I decided not to interrupt. I figured I'd slip out quietly and wait in the car. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "Mrs. Callahan." I turned and saw him, Nathan, one of Mike's younger coworkers. I remembered him from a couple of Christmas parties, tall, dark hair, always a little messy like he forgot to brush it, but somehow made it work. Maybe mid-30s, polite, quietly funny, not the kind of man who drew attention. The kind you didn't notice until you realized you were already looking at him too long. "Oh, I was just heading to the car," I said. "I'll wait out there." He glanced at the sky. "Looks like it's about to rain." I parked close. I said, "I don't mind at all." He replied. I hesitated. I really did, but my feet were sore, and the sky had turned that heavy purple color like an old bruise. His car smelled like peppermint and leather, clean but lived in. He turned down the radio as soon as I got in. We didn't speak right away. There was that soft silence between two people who don't really know what to say yet. "You helped a lot in there," he said after a moment. Everyone seemed to appreciate it. "I just tried to be useful," I replied, watching the rain start to dot the windshield. It came down softly at first, like a secret being told in pieces. "That's what people like you do," he said, always helping, always in the background. I didn't know how to take that. People like me. He caught the look on my face. I didn't mean it badly, just, I don't think most people even realize how much women like you hold everything together. A breath caught in my throat. No one had said something like that to me in years. Maybe ever. I looked at him, trying to read his expression, but he kept his eyes steady on the road. "Funny," I said, half laughing. "Sometimes it feels like I became invisible after 50. He glanced at me. Then back to the road. "Not invisible, Nora." The way he said my name made me sit a little straighter, like I'd forgotten something, and he had just reminded me. I thought he'd drop me at the office, but he turned down the side street that led straight to our house. "You know where we live. I dropped Mike off after the company baseball game once," he said. "You made lemonade that day, remember?" I didn't, not clearly, but I nodded anyway. He pulled into the driveway. Parked but didn't turn off the engine. The rain had thickened now, running in soft silver rivers down the windows. "Thanks for the ride," I said, reaching for the door, but before I could open it, he spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" His voice was low, careful, almost afraid to break whatever had settled between us. "Sure," I said, my hand still on the door handle. He looked at me, not like I was old, not like I was someone's wife or someone's mother, but like I was a person. "A woman, a whole one. Are you happy?" he asked, just like that. I blinked. A strange warmth spread through my chest, then guilt, cold and sharp. "That's a complicated question," I said. He nodded. "I think it's supposed to be." I didn't answer. Not right away. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I even knew how. I stepped out into the rain. I didn't rush. I let it soak through my blouse and hair, all the way down my spine. It felt cold and clean. And confusing. Mike was still at the party. He wouldn't be home for another hour. I glanced back once. Nathan was still sitting in the car. Later, I stood in the kitchen, drying my hair with a towel, and I realized something strange had woken up inside me. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay beside Mike listening to the rhythm of his breathing, the soft rasp of a snore. It was a sound I'd grown used to, like an old clock ticking in the background, familiar. Safe, but that night it sounded distant. Nathan's question wouldn't leave me. "Are you happy?" No one had asked me that since. Maybe since I was 25, back when happiness felt like movement, kids to raise, a house to build, mortgage stress, spilled lasagna, laughter in the kitchen. Back then, the answer was easy, but somewhere along the way, we both went quiet in the same room. The next morning, I poured coffee, watered the plants by the kitchen window. Mike kissed my cheek on the way out, mumbled something about traffic and meetings. I smiled, that well-practiced mechanical smile. When the door closed, I stood there for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. "Nathan, I hope I didn't cross a line yesterday." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the screen. "Me? No, you didn't. It just caught me off guard." He replied almost immediately. "Nathan, that's fair. It wasn't a fair question, but I've been thinking about you since the party. The way you looked away. I don't know why I noticed, but I did. I didn't respond. I walked around the living room, picked up a stray sock, straightened a picture frame that was already straight. My heart was tapping too fast. Finally, I typed, "Me, you're not wrong. I've been invisible for a long time." He didn't reply right away. I imagined him reading slowly, thinking. Then I wrote again, "Me, would you like to get coffee sometime? Just talk, nothing more." I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we blew out birthday candles, paid bills, whispered arguments. And now I was staring at a message to a man half my age. I didn't say yes, not really, but I didn't say no either. That Thursday, I told Mike I had errands. I wore a blouse I hadn't touched in years. Navy, fitted in all the right places. I took extra care with my makeup, though I told myself it was habit. We met at a small cafe tucked down a side street, the kind with creaky wooden floors and soft jazz humming in the background. Nathan stood when I walked in, his sleeves rolled up, a quiet smile on his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "Neither was I." I replied. We sat in a corner booth, talked about books, the weather, traffic, but then the conversation shifted, like stepping from the shallow end into something deeper. He told me about his parents' divorce, how he watched his mother disappear into the role of ex-wife, how she never really came back from it, how she taught him to notice when women go quiet in their own home. I told him about my children, how I missed when they were small, how I sometimes resented their freedom, how I loved Mike, but sometimes I wasn't sure if I still knew what that meant. Our fingers brushed once as I reached for my coffee. I froze. So did he. There was a spark, small but real. I'm not looking for anything reckless. I whispered. Neither am I, he said. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But something had already shifted between us. Not tension, just awareness. When we stood to leave, he touched my elbow, just briefly. Thank you for saying yes, he said. I drove home with the window cracked, let the wind tangle my hair. I smiled, not because of what had happened, but because of what might, and I hadn't smiled like that in a long, long time. The days that followed were quiet outside, but noisy inside my head. Mike didn't notice anything different, or if he did, he didn't say. We still had dinner at 7:00, still watched our shows in the evening, still kissed good night like clockwork, but my mind kept drifting, back to the cafe, back to Nathan's hand brushing mine, back to the way his eyes didn't flinch when I told the truth. He didn't interrupt. He didn't fix. He just listened, and somehow that meant everything. I tried to shake it off. I baked, gardened, scrubbed the bathroom tiles like they'd offended me. But late at night, when the house fell still, and I sat in the den with only a lamp and the sound of the fridge humming, I replayed every word, not the coffee, the feeling, the way I hadn't felt like someone's shadow. A few days later, he texted, Nathan, found a spot by the lake, quiet, peaceful, want to go for a walk? It was Sunday, one of those afternoons that could lean lazy or heavy. I wore jeans, a sweater, comfortable, not intentional. At least that's what I told myself. He was already there when I pulled up, leaning against the hood of his car. Hands in pockets, sky pale blue, gray behind him, the color that makes everything feel softer. We walked without talking. Birds chirped, leaves crunched, water lapped against the edge of the shore. You ever wonder, he said finally, what your life would look like if you'd made just one different decision? I stopped walking. Which one? Any of them. A conversation you never had, a chance you let go, a truth you swallowed. I turned to him. Why are you asking me this? Because I see you thinking about it. He looked at me gently, and I felt something twist, not shame. Something older, something deeper, grief, longing, memory. I didn't come here to do anything wrong, I said quietly. I don't want to betray anyone. You haven't, he said, not yet. The wind picked up. A strand of my hair blew across my face. Before I could fix it, he reached out and tucked it behind my ear. A simple gesture. But my body responded like it had been waiting years just to be touched in that quiet way. I stepped back. I'm married. Almost like I had to remind myself. He smiled, soft and sad. I know, and I'm not that young, but you're not old. You're more alive than most people I've ever met. I didn't know what to do with that. I sat on a bench by the water. The sun had started to dip. Gold fell across the lake like spilled light. Why me? I asked finally. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because you carry silence like it's something you earned. Because you look with your eyes before your mouth ever moves. First time I saw you, I thought, this woman is holding the world together with thread and a tired smile. I closed my eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not in 63 years. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch again. But something passed between us. When I got home, Mike was watching a game, beer in hand. He glanced up. Hey, everything okay? I nodded. Just needed some fresh air. He nodded, eyes already back on the screen, and I stood in the doorway, feeling the ache of something I didn't have a name for. Love doesn't always end with yelling. Sometimes it fades so gently, you don't notice it's gone, until someone reminds you what it once felt like. The week that followed was filled with nothing on the outside. Laundry, groceries, chores, but inside, it felt like I was standing on the edge of something unnamed. 3 days later, I ran into Nathan at the grocery store, of all places. I was in the produce aisle, checking a tomato for bruises. Then I heard his voice behind me, still the best eyes in the room. I turned too quickly, heart pounding. He wasn't grinning, just looking gentle still. "Nathan," I breathed. "You scared me. Didn't mean to." He looked down at the basket in his hands. "Wasn't sure I'd see you again." "I wasn't sure either," I said. The store hummed around us, shopping carts rolling, soft music, an old woman asking where the time was. He cleared his throat. "I think about you." The words hit like a tide. "Soft but heavy. This isn't sustainable," I said. "This thing between us, it can't go where it wants to go." "I know," he said quietly, "but that doesn't mean it wasn't real." We stood there in the middle of the aisle, suspended between choice and memory. Then I nodded. "Walk me to my car." Outside, the air smelled like rain again. We didn't speak, just walked side by side, like we always had. At my car, I turned. "I can't be someone who lies, Nathan. Not to him, not to myself." "I don't want you to be," he said. "But I needed you to know." You woke something in me, something I didn't know could still feel. The tears came before I could stop them, soft, almost apologetic. "You did the same for me," I whispered. He stepped forward, and for the first time we embraced, not with heat, not with desire, but with an ache, a quiet letting go, his arms around me, my cheek against his shoulder, grief and love sitting side by side. When he pulled back, he didn't say much. Just "Goodbye, Nora." And just like that, he turned and walked away. I sat in my car, hands still on the wheel, watching the tail lights of his car vanish into the distance. I didn't cry again. I just sat with the truth. When I got home, Mike was in the backyard, fiddling with the grill. The air smelled like charcoal and lighter fluid. "Hey," he said, wiping his hands, "was thinking we could do burgers tonight, like old times." I nodded. "Sounds nice." He looked at me a little longer than usual, and for the first time in years, I told him the truth. "I'm not sure," I said, "but I want to be." We stood there quietly, the sky above turning orange and bruised. It wasn't closure, not really. It wasn't an ending or a beginning. It was just a moment, and sometimes a moment is all you get, but it's enough to wake you up, to remind you you are still here, still capable of feeling, of choosing, of changing, even after all this. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of love, of longing, of what it means to be truly seen, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes in second chances and soft awakenings. Because sometimes the most powerful love stories don't start with fire. They start with a whisper, with a question, with a moment you didn't see coming, and even if it ends quietly, that doesn't mean it wasn't real. It only means it mattered. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay present, stay honest, and remember, you're never too old to feel something real.